Your soulmate secretly met someone close to you. Here's what they talked about. My beloved child, freeze this moment, because what you are about to hear was never meant to reach your ears this early. Somewhere, behind an ordinary conversation that looked completely harmless, a door quietly opened. No one announced it. No one made a scene. Yet the words spoken there carried a weight that could ripple through your future in ways you cannot yet imagine. Stay with me for a little longer, because every sentence from this point forward is another piece of a puzzle that has been forming long before today. There is someone close to you, someone your soulmate believed could see the version of you that the world rarely notices. They did not approach this person with loud emotions or dramatic confessions. Instead, they arrived with quiet curiosity. They wanted truth. They wanted clarity. More than anything, they wanted to know whether the feeling growing inside them was real, or simply another passing emotion that time would erase. The conversation began with a question so simple that almost anyone would have overlooked it. Tell me, what are they really like when no one is watching? That single question changed the atmosphere. The answer was not immediate. There was a pause. A thoughtful silence. Because describing someone's soul is never easy. Anyone can explain appearances. Anyone can talk about achievements. But revealing someone's unseen character, that requires honesty. What happened next surprised even your soulmate. Instead of hearing stories about perfection, they heard stories about resilience. They learned that you have faced moments when giving up would have been easier, yet you kept moving. They discovered that your kindness often arrives quietly, without asking for recognition. They realized that many people know your smile, but very few understand the strength it takes for you to wear it. Imagine hearing that about someone you cannot stop thinking about. Would your heart become calmer? Or would it beat even faster? Your soulmate experienced both at the same time. They listened carefully, almost afraid to interrupt. Every answer seemed to erase an old doubt and replace it with a new sense of certainty. Yet another question appeared. Do they ever hide what they're feeling? The response carried more meaning than expected. Sometimes, the person replied. Not because they want to deceive anyone, but because they protect others before protecting themselves. Those words settled deeply. Something shifted inside your soulmate at that exact moment. Not because they finally understood everything, but because they realized how much there still was to understand. And that realization made them value you even more. Think about this carefully. How often do people search for someone who shines only in perfect moments? Now imagine finding someone whose light becomes even clearer during difficult ones. That is the discovery your soulmate was quietly making. Wait before you move on, because the next part of their conversation became even more unexpected. Your soulmate leaned forward and asked something almost no one has the courage to ask. Do they believe they're worthy of the future they're hoping for? The room became silent again. Silence sometimes speaks louder than answers. Finally, the reply came. They don't always realize how much they matter. Those few words echoed inside your soulmate's thoughts. They weren't hearing weakness. They were hearing humanity. They weren't searching for someone flawless. They were searching for someone genuine. And every answer they received pulled them closer to believing that destiny had been quietly guiding their steps all along. But here's the detail that almost everyone misses. This meeting was never about collecting information. It was about confirming a feeling that refused to disappear. Your soulmate wanted reassurance that what their heart had been whispering wasn't an illusion created by hope. Instead, they discovered something much deeper. Every story they heard painted the same picture from different angles, as though invisible threads had been connecting the pieces long before anyone noticed. What if this quiet conversation was never an accident? What if it became the turning point neither of them expected? Before you continue, hold on to that question. Because the final words spoken before they left that meeting carried a meaning your soulmate will never forget. And once you hear them, everything that seemed ordinary until now may begin to make perfect sense. So stay a little longer. The next chapter doesn't begin with another question. It begins with a sentence that neither your soulmate nor the person sitting across from them ever saw coming. A quiet warning before we continue: don't assume the most important sentence has already been spoken. Sometimes a single unexpected remark, whispered at the very end of a conversation, becomes the one that changes everything. This is exactly where the story takes a turn no one could have predicted. Stay with me, because what happened next gave your soulmate a completely different perspective about you. Just as the meeting seemed ready to end, the person close to you smiled gently and said something without being asked. There's one thing you should know before you leave. Your soulmate immediately stopped gathering their thoughts. Something about those words felt different. There was no drama. No attempt to impress. Just calm certainty. Then came the sentence that lingered in the air. If you're looking for someone who never gives up on the people they truly care about, you're talking about them. For a brief moment, your soulmate didn't answer. Not because they had nothing to say, but because those words reached a place inside them that logic could never explain. Have you ever experienced a moment when everything suddenly fits together? When pieces you've been carrying for months quietly fall into place without effort? That is exactly how it felt. Until then, your soulmate had been trying to understand your actions. Now they were beginning to understand your heart. And once someone sees the heart behind the actions, everything changes. They started remembering small moments they had almost ignored. A conversation that seemed ordinary. A kind gesture that appeared effortless. A smile that arrived exactly when someone needed hope the most. Suddenly, none of those memories looked ordinary anymore. Each one became another confirmation. Another reason to believe that there was something rare about your connection. But the conversation wasn't over. Your soulmate asked one final question. If you could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? The answer arrived almost instantly. Don't rush to understand everything. Some people reveal themselves through time, not through explanations. Those words settled deeply. For the first time, your soulmate stopped searching for immediate certainty. Instead, they became willing to let the story unfold naturally. And strangely enough, that patience brought them even closer to the truth. Think about that for a moment. How many beautiful things are missed simply because people expect instant answers? Some journeys aren't meant to be solved in a single day. Some connections become stronger precisely because they are allowed to grow at their own pace. Your soulmate finally understood this. They walked away from that meeting carrying something far more valuable than information. They carried peace. Not because every question had been answered, but because the most important doubt had quietly disappeared. Before we continue, if this story has sparked your curiosity or reminded you of someone special, I'd love to know your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments, and if you're enjoying this journey, subscribing simply means you'll be here when the next chapter unfolds. Yet there was one detail your soulmate never mentioned to anyone. As they looked back one final time before leaving, the person close to you said something so softly it almost disappeared into the silence. When the time is right, don't be afraid to tell them the truth. Your soulmate didn't respond aloud. But inside, a promise was made. A promise that would quietly shape every decision they made after that day. And what that promise leads to, is far bigger than either of them imagined. Don't leave just yet. The next chapter begins with a decision your soulmate makes in complete silence, a decision that sets an extraordinary chain of events into motion. Pause for one more moment, because the next chapter doesn't begin with another conversation, it begins with a decision made entirely in silence. No audience witnessed it. No dramatic announcement followed. Yet from that quiet moment forward, your soulmate started seeing every path through a different lens. Wait until the end, because what seemed like a simple choice soon revealed a much deeper meaning. After leaving that meeting, your soulmate didn't rush to send a message or search for another opinion. Instead, they chose something far more powerful. They chose to observe. They wanted their next step to come from understanding, not impulse. For days, they replayed every sentence they had heard. Not to memorize the words, but to understand the truth hidden between them. One realization kept returning. The person close to you had never tried to convince them to like you. They had simply described who you truly are. That difference mattered. Because genuine truth never needs decoration. As this understanding settled in, your soulmate began noticing something remarkable. Small moments that once seemed unrelated suddenly connected like stars forming a constellation. Every coincidence felt less random. Every unexpected encounter carried a quiet sense of purpose. Have you ever wondered why certain people keep crossing your path, even when life pulls you in different directions? What if those moments are not interruptions? What if they are gentle reminders that some connections are meant to keep finding each other? That question stayed with your soulmate. And instead of chasing certainty, they started appreciating the journey itself. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, while reflecting on everything they had learned, they remembered a single sentence spoken almost casually during the meeting. They notice more than they ever say. At first, it sounded simple. But the longer they thought about it, the more powerful it became. They realized that your quiet observations, your patience, and your thoughtful nature weren't signs of distance, they were signs of depth. Not everyone speaks first. Some people understand first. That realization changed the way your soulmate viewed every memory involving you. Moments that once felt ordinary now carried hidden meaning. The pauses. The smiles. The conversations that ended too soon. Even the silences no longer felt empty. They felt full of possibilities waiting for the right moment. Stay with me, because this is where everything begins to shift. Your soulmate made a private promise that no one else knows about. They promised themselves they would stop assuming and start listening. They would stop fearing what might happen and start appreciating what already exists. That quiet promise became the beginning of a completely new chapter. Not because the world around them suddenly changed, but because they did. And when a person's perspective changes, their future often changes with it. There was one final realization that arrived unexpectedly. Your soulmate understood that the meeting had never been arranged to reveal secrets about you. It had been arranged to reveal something about themselves. Their patience. Their willingness to trust. Their readiness to recognize something meaningful without forcing it. That was the true message hidden beneath every word. Before you leave, remember this thought. Sometimes the most important conversations are not the ones that give us answers. They are the ones that help us ask better questions. And perhaps that is exactly what this meeting was always meant to do. Because the story is no longer about two people connected by chance. It is about two paths quietly moving toward the same horizon, each step guided by understanding instead of uncertainty. You'll understand the full picture only when every chapter comes together. And when it does, you'll realize that the most unforgettable part of this journey wasn't the secret meeting itself, it was everything that quietly began after it. Before this story reaches its destination, listen with fresh attention, because the final pieces are never the loudest, they're the quietest. What happened after that silent promise wasn't a coincidence. It unfolded one moment at a time, almost invisibly, until even your soulmate could no longer ignore the pattern. Stay until the final moment, because the last revelation may change the way you look at every small encounter in your own life. Days turned into weeks, yet the memory of that private meeting never faded. Instead, it grew stronger. Not because your soulmate kept reliving the conversation, but because life itself kept confirming it. Every time they heard your name, they no longer reacted with uncertainty. They reacted with calm confidence. Every unexpected coincidence seemed to whisper the same message. Keep going. It wasn't a voice anyone else could hear. It was an inner certainty becoming stronger with every passing day. Then came an ordinary afternoon that felt anything but ordinary. Your soulmate found themselves standing in a familiar place when someone casually mentioned you again. There was nothing dramatic about the conversation. No shocking announcement. No unbelievable surprise. Yet one simple sentence stood out. Some people don't enter your life to create noise, they enter your life to create direction. Those words stayed with them long after the conversation ended. For the first time, they stopped asking, "What if this never happens?" and started asking, "What kind of person do I want to become if it does?" That single shift changed everything. Because meaningful connections are not built only by waiting. They are strengthened through growth, patience, and quiet courage. Your soulmate realized that every lesson, every delay, and every unanswered question had been preparing them to appreciate something they might once have overlooked. Think about that. How often does life prepare us long before we recognize the opportunity? Perhaps the waiting wasn't empty after all. Perhaps it was building the wisdom needed for the next chapter. As this understanding settled into their heart, another memory returned. The final look from the person they had secretly met. It wasn't filled with mystery anymore. It was filled with reassurance. Almost as if they had been silently saying, "Trust what is unfolding. Not everything meaningful arrives all at once." That thought became your soulmate's quiet anchor. Whenever doubt appeared, they remembered that meeting. Whenever impatience whispered, they remembered those calm words. And little by little, hope replaced hesitation. Before we reach the final chapter, if this journey has resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may encourage someone else watching today. And if these stories inspire you to reflect a little deeper, subscribing is simply a way to continue this journey together whenever a new chapter arrives. Now listen closely. The greatest surprise was never hidden inside that secret conversation. It was hidden inside the person your soulmate became because of it. They became more patient, more understanding, more willing to notice the quiet details that most people overlook. And in doing so, they discovered something priceless. Sometimes destiny doesn't reveal itself through one extraordinary event. Sometimes it reveals itself through many ordinary moments that suddenly connect into one extraordinary picture. So don't rush past this thought. The meeting was only the beginning. The conversation was only the spark. The transformation that followed, that was the real story all along. And in the final chapter, you'll discover the one unexpected realization that brings every clue, every question, and every quiet moment together in a way neither your soulmate nor you could have imagined. Stay with this journey, because the ending doesn't simply conclude the story, it reveals why it began. One final step remains, and strangely, it isn't about discovering another secret. It's about recognizing the meaning that was quietly hiding behind every moment you've heard so far. If you've stayed until now, don't leave just yet, because the ending isn't a surprise designed to shock you, it is a realization designed to stay with you long after this story ends. Your soulmate eventually understood something that could never have been explained during that first meeting. The person close to you hadn't simply answered questions. They had offered perspective. Every sentence, every pause, every thoughtful response had been pointing toward the same truth. The strongest connections are not built on assumptions, they are built on understanding. That truth became impossible to ignore. Your soulmate stopped looking for perfect timing. They stopped waiting for every uncertainty to disappear. Instead, they began trusting the quiet progress taking place beneath the surface. Because not every meaningful chapter announces itself. Some arrive gently. Some grow silently. And some transform your future before you even realize they've begun. As days continued to pass, something beautiful happened. Your soulmate noticed that the fear of "what if" had slowly been replaced by a new question. What can I learn from this journey today? That question brought peace. It replaced pressure with patience. It replaced doubt with curiosity. And it reminded them that every meaningful relationship is strengthened not by rushing ahead, but by appreciating each step along the way. Think about your own life for a moment. How many moments once felt confusing, only to make perfect sense much later? Sometimes the answers we chase aren't hiding from us. They're simply waiting for the right season to be understood. That is why the secret meeting mattered. Not because it revealed dramatic mysteries, but because it helped someone see another person with clearer eyes. It reminded your soulmate that character speaks more loudly than appearances. That consistency is more powerful than promises. That kindness leaves an impression long after words have faded. Those became the lessons they carried forward. And perhaps they're the lessons this story quietly leaves with you as well. Now imagine your soulmate looking back on that day one final time. They no longer remember every sentence word for word, but they remember exactly how they felt. Hopeful, calm, certain that some meetings happen for a reason, even when we don't recognize that reason immediately. That feeling stayed with them. It became a quiet source of confidence whenever life felt uncertain. And maybe that's the greatest revelation of all. The meeting was never about predicting the future. It was about preparing for it. Preparing with patience. Preparing with wisdom. Preparing with the courage to value genuine connection over quick conclusions. So as this chapter comes to a close, remember this. Some of the most important conversations happen away from the spotlight.